And of course, I love how you said drive, because pun is always intended here on stream. That is, I don't have many rules on stream, but that is certainly one of them. Welcome to Stream, a TruckTractorTrailer.com production. My name is Zach Miller. I'm your host, and I'm really excited to be joined today by Marty Lelugas, who is the new Chief Operating Officer at TruckTractorTrailer.com. Marty, welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
Hey, Zach. Yes, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's kick it off from there. You come from a long career in trucking. Why was this the perfect time to join TruckTractorTrailer.com?
Yeah, so I just a little bit about my background. I was formerly with Ritchie Brothers and Iron Planet, and before that, the company I worked for was independent, called Asset Appraisal Services. So an inspection company in the trucking space, well, and in the heavy equipment space as well, but serving for the OEMs and their captive finance companies, primarily in big banks and other companies with a vested interest in heavy equipment, right? So I've been around the block on inspections, been around the block on auctions, been around the block on marketplaces. So for me, TTT is an up and coming platform. It's a really exciting time to be a part of the experience and the ride, so to speak. And from a timing perspective, for me, like, I love the small thing, sort of the larger company that Ritchie Brothers was really exciting for me. So from an industry perspective, I think the timing is great for a disruptive force like TTT. And for me personally, it was just a great time to get back to what I love, which is the smaller family business type feel.
Oh, I love it. And I love how that is so much of what trucking still is. I know not as much as it used to be, but it still is very much like that. And of course, I love how you said drive, because pun is always intended here on stream. That is, I don't have many rules on stream, but that is certainly one of them. But speaking of the timing and where the industry is going, how comfortable would you say the industry is with selling assets online?
I think very, very comfortable now, and 2 years ago, less so probably, but the pandemic kind of changed everything, right? And so we were already driving towards online transactions probably becoming the norm rather than the exception. I was with Iron Planet for a long time. Obviously, they're a big transactor online. It was being normalized by them and other similar companies doing the same kind of thing. But the pandemic was kind of an accelerator, right? So what might have taken 10 years or 20 years to get to a point where it becomes normal operating procedure to buy trucks, trailers, equipment online, now it's here, it's today. It's, the idea that we need to be doing these sorts of things in person is kind of a dying art across a lot of industries, but especially in trucking and equipment. And while, old habits die hard, I guess, I think having a forcing factor like a global pandemic sort of made everybody change the way that they view the industry. So I think more than ever, this is going to be the way that people do business when they're buying and selling really anything, but especially trucks and equipment and trailers.
Oh, absolutely. And I have friends who bought their houses online during the pandemic. Yep. And I'm not just talking about Zillow. I mean, I'm talking about legacy brokers. They were able to buy their houses online. So I completely agree with you. But with a massive change like conversion to digital, there are, of course, pain points. And you're such a great person to talk to about one of the very specific pain points, which is the quality of it. And so how do inspections really sort of plug in that pain point for buyers?
Yeah, I think inspections become one of the most essential and vital components of the transaction,
Mm-hmm.
now and going forward, especially, right? So as more and more, you can buy a truck. If you're sitting in Florida, you could buy one that's in Washington State, or if you're in California, you could buy it from New York or anywhere in between, right? It's not practical to lay hands on the truck or always to lay eyes on the truck. And it's still an expensive transaction, online, in person, no matter how you're doing it. So that peace of mind that comes with knowing that, you're getting what you paid for, if you're a buyer, is, you can't really put a price tag on it. It's so vital to have, competent, qualified third-party inspections on these kind of sales, right? So no vested interest in the outcome of the sale, who buys it or how much it sells for. You want to have somebody whose business it is really to do inspections, being a part of that, and that's what TTT can provide. So more than ever, it's the kind of thing that isn't just a nice to have. I think it's a necessity.
I totally agree with you, and I think that's exactly it. It went from a nice to have to a necessity given the current market.
Yep.
So what are some of the components of a quality inspection?
Yeah, so obviously there's some basic things that are going to be found in most inspections, right? You want high quality pictures, you want glamour shots, as we say, front left, front right, the front and back of the truck. You want to get that sort of big picture view of the machine itself and how it looks, right? But interior photos, tire and brake photos, tire and brake measurements, sleeper photographs, engine photos. A lot of times videos are a big component of an equipment inspection. On a truck, it might be the engine running. On a piece of heavy iron, it might be the hydraulics functioning, or other things happening. So those components are kind of the standard stuff. But when I'm looking at an inspection report, one of the things that I like to tell people what to look for is evidence that the truck was well cared for. So a lot of times that's kind of hidden, right? You have to go a little bit deeper, and you're going to need a little bit more thorough of an inspection than just a handful of photographs and some specs, right? And so that's where you got to dive a little bit deeper and take a look at, what do the seats look like? What does the interior look like? Does it look like the person who drove this machine for how many ever years was extremely hard on it? Does it seem like it's older than its mileage, or it's younger than its mileage? There's some clues that you can find there, and a lot of that will tell you, stuff that you need to know if you're a buyer. If the person is taking good care of the interior of the truck and the exterior of the truck, odds are they're taking good care of the engine too, which is where the real money is going to be sunk if something goes wrong. So I like to tell people, try to find those clues, try to see those little things that will give you a hint as to, how well cared for was this machine.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting, because I think as we're seeing this digital shift, I think originally a lot of the questions were really just based on the mileage. Like, okay, what model is the vehicle? What model is the engine? What's the mileage? And it's like, yeah, sure, of course, we can answer those questions easy, no problem. But that's not the holistic view of the vehicle. And that's not, if that's the path you want to go down as a buyer, I'm concerned you're not asking the right questions. And so I really am glad that the comprehensive inspection is starting to come to the forefront, because now you're asking the right questions. Now you're becoming the smart consumer. And that's how, more and more smart consumers, the more streamlined this process becomes.
Exactly right. And it's interesting that you mentioned mileage too. That's another component. In a more in-depth inspection, you might see that ECM reading from the truck, right? And there's some good clues inside there, right? Because a 700,000 mile truck, one might be different than another in terms of how hard that 700,000 miles was. What was the geography that the truck was in? Now, you're not going to get that from an ECM reading, but you can kind of ascertain that from, are there rust marks anywhere on the machine? Does it seem like it was operated in the north or the south? These are the kinds of little clues. And then in the ECM, you can see idle hours, and you might have a clue as to, was the truck used a lot in urban areas versus out on the highway? There's different pieces of information that you're going to gather from the more thorough inspections, and that's the kind of stuff that can make you a smart consumer, as you said, a smart buyer. And it's not just a simple, oh, it has X 100,000 miles, so it's worth this. I mean, there's a little bit more to it than that.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, if you look at the sports analogies, it really is the analytics when you just dig a little deeper into the numbers, and you get that more comprehensive view than just, you know, your sort of regular stats that we all grew up reading in the almanac.
Sure.
You know, it helps. It's basic, but you know, if you're spending, you know, anywhere between $60,000 and $160,000 on something, run the numbers thoroughly.
Absolutely. It's the difference between batting average and on base percentage, right? I mean, batting average is the old way. The mileage just by itself is the old way, right? We're looking for some deeper, more valuable analytics here.
So then, yeah, so let's go with that. The value proposition for a seller who's interested in ordering an inspection report, what exactly is that for them?
Well, I think for one, you're showing that there's nothing to hide, right? We talked about at the beginning, the buyer wants to know that they're getting what they paid for. So if you're a seller showing all your cards, here's the machine, it is answer a lot of those smart buy might have. And so if you know, you provide that inspection, you show all those things, boom, now it might mean an extra 10%, an extra 15%, you know, whatever it may be. The market's obviously going to determine some of that, but you won't go backwards if you provide an inspection. You have only upward, you know, only positive gain to make from providing that report.
Perfect. Any other thoughts on inspections or you know, some of the value props, or you think we're good? We covered it. We solved all the world's problems.
We say, yeah, I think we're pretty good. I mean, to me, and obviously I come from the industry, right? So I've overseen something like 300,000 inspections, just an enormous amount. We did lots and lots of inspections every year. And to me, it's a no-brainer, right? If I'm transacting online at this level, at this scale, you know, a vehicle purchase of significance, I want that inspection. If I'm the buyer, and if I'm the seller, I want to provide that inspection because I'm going to get a better quality of buyer and I'm going to get a better return on my listing. So to me, for both sides, it's the thing to do.
I completely agree. Since you're the inspection guy, if a buyer or seller, they're on the TTT platform, they're interested in learning more about the third-party inspection process, how would they get in touch with you?
Absolutely, yeah. So on the TTT page is the leadership team. So you'll see my contact information, my LinkedIn, my email is marty@trucktractortrailer.com. So I'm at the inspection of units that we post on TTT or really anything in between. So I'm always available on LinkedIn and via my email.
Awesome. Thanks so much for joining us today. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate the conversation. And I just love talking about how we work on fixing problems and easing that buyer journey into the digital space. And I think this right here is one of the missing components to that.
My pleasure. Yep, absolutely. It was a fun conversation, and yeah, it's a nice thing to be a part of, to connect buyers and sellers in a way that everybody wins. So
if you like these topics, like talking freight, logistics, digital revolution, all that fun stuff, please be sure to subscribe, and we'll see you next time on Stream.